Under a quiet night that seemed unchanged on the surface, something unsettling began to surface beneath the silence, a narrative shifting in ways no one could fully verify. What emerged was not clarity but fragments, half-spoken truths, and a sense that someone close to your special person had become entangled in a situation layered with misunderstanding and emotional weight. The story suggested a connection, not fully explained, involving people whose lives overlapped more deeply than anyone outside could see, leaving questions heavier than answers. In this unfolding account, your special person was seen making choices that would later be interpreted in multiple ways, depending on who was telling the story. The woman at the center of it all was not defined by accusation or certainty, but by her quiet reaction, standing still as if absorbing something too complex to immediately respond. There was no chaos in the moment, only a suspended kind of silence that made every detail feel amplified, every glance and pause carrying unintended meaning. And as the night stretched forward, it became clear that what had been exposed was less about wrongdoing and more about perception, timing, and emotional misalignment that no one had fully understood until now. What remains uncertain is not just what happened, but how easily truth can shift, depending on who is telling it. Moments like this reveal less about events themselves, and more about the fragile nature of interpretation, where certainty dissolves, and only perspective remains to guide understanding forward in silence. The timeline didn't add up, the excuses didn't match, the emotions didn't align. Something felt off, like a puzzle with a missing corner. And then, the truth arrived, not through a fight, not through confrontation, but through someone else entirely. A person who knew the whole story, who carried the evidence, who couldn't keep it hidden anymore. They stepped forward with trembling hands and an unsteady voice, and revealed everything your special person tried to bury. They spoke about a conversation overheard, a message seen, a choice made in the dark, and when they finished, the room was so silent, it felt like the entire world was holding its breath. The woman's eyes filled, not with rage, but with a heartbreak so deep it could echo across oceans. And that's when the revelation hit her, like a tidal wave swallowing the shore. The betrayal wasn't just an act, it was a warning, a sign, a shift in destiny. But what she discovered next is the reason you're still here listening. Because, my beloved child, the woman who was betrayed last night was not someone random. She wasn't just any woman whose life drifted near theirs. She was you. You were the one deceived. You were the one whose truth was bent. You were the one whose trust was quietly broken, while you slept unaware of the storm already forming around you. And yet, here is the twist that no one saw coming. The betrayal wasn't meant to destroy you. It was meant to reveal you. It was meant to show you what you couldn't see before, how powerful your intuition is, how vital your presence is, how dangerous your silence is to those who underestimate you. Someone cried last night, yes, but not just the person who revealed the secret. Your special person cried too, not because they were caught, but because the moment the truth surfaced, they realized the magnitude of what they stood to lose. Not a relationship, not a routine, but you, the woman whose loyalty was their shield, whose love was their strength, whose presence was their unspoken blessing. And now, as this story unfolds, as threads connect in ways they never expected, something bigger waits just ahead, a truth that will flip the entire narrative and force even the betrayer to confront what they never wanted to face. Before we continue, open your heart for a moment, because what comes next doesn't just uncover truth, it exposes the layers beneath it, and this part begins not with fear, but with a voice that arrived like a gust of cold wind at dawn. You deserve to know everything. That was the line spoken by the person who stepped forward, trembling, unable to carry the weight of the secret any longer. Their voice cracked, their eyes glistened, yet their courage held steady. They weren't looking for attention. They weren't chasing drama. They were simply trying to save you from a reality that had been quietly twisting in the dark. They told you how your special person had acted the night before, how their choices didn't match their promises, how their words wobbled like a lie learning to walk, how their actions felt rushed, nervous, almost guilty. They explained every detail, every moment, like they were walking you through the scene step by step, afraid you might collapse if they said it too fast. And as they spoke, you didn't interrupt, you didn't breathe, you didn't move, you just listened, because somewhere deep inside, a part of you already sensed something wasn't right. You just never expected the story to hit this hard. But here's the twist, the shocking part that no one prepared you for. After the truth was handed to you, after the revelations were laid bare, something strange happened. The energy in the room shifted. The person who told you everything wasn't done. They leaned in, lowered their voice, and whispered the part that shook even your heartbeat. They didn't betray you the way you think. And suddenly the narrative changed. Suddenly the betrayal wasn't about another woman, another intention, or another future. It was something deeper, more emotional, more unexpected. Your special person broke someone yesterday, yes, but the woman wasn't a stranger. It wasn't a third person. It wasn't even a hidden story. The woman was someone who carried a role nobody pays attention to. A woman who trusted too easily, believed too openly, and held on to promises tighter than she should have. And that woman was a version of you. Not the you of today, not the you sitting here listening, but the version of you who lived in the past, who sacrificed, who stayed, who prayed, who hoped, who forgave. They betrayed the woman you used to be, the one who believed their every word, without noticing the cracks forming between them. And then came the moment that changed the direction of everything, as the witness who had been carrying pieces of this truth finally met your gaze with a conflicted stillness, something between hesitation and resolve. They told you there was more ahead, not as a threat, but as a warning that what you had heard so far was only part of a much larger emotional story still unfolding. According to them, your special person was never acting from a place of intent to hurt or mislead, but from a deeper fear of loss, a fear so strong it shaped their silence more than their words ever could. The revelation didn't erase the pain, but it reframed it in a way that made everything feel more complicated, less absolute. They explained that after everything surfaced, sleep never came easily, and normalcy no longer fit the way the night had ended. Instead, there was restlessness, reflection, and a heavy awareness of what could no longer be avoided. In those quiet hours, they were seen pacing, overwhelmed by thoughts they could not organize, repeatedly saying your name in a low voice, as if trying to anchor themselves to something real, while everything inside them shifted. What the witness emphasized most was not the drama of events, but the intensity of emotion behind them, the struggle between fear and honesty, between holding on and finally stepping forward. And in that tension, a turning point quietly formed, one that suggested the next step would no longer be avoidance, but confrontation with the truth as it is, not as it was hoped to be. Because once the secret slipped out, once their actions were exposed, something hit them harder than any confrontation ever could. The realization that every step they took away from the truth took them one step closer to losing you forever. They didn't betray you for pleasure. They didn't do it for distraction. They did it because they were fighting a fear they never admitted, a fear of not being enough for you, of failing you, of losing control over a feeling too deep for their own courage to hold. And last night, that fear pushed them into a choice that betrayed the woman you used to be, the version of you who waited, trusted, and believed without hesitation. But here's where the story takes a sharp, breathtaking turn. The witness revealed that after the moment of betrayal, your special person didn't celebrate, didn't feel relieved, didn't walk away with a smile. Instead, they broke. Fully, completely, unexpectedly broke. They sat alone, replaying every memory of you in silence. The moments you laughed without knowing they were watching. The moments you spoke with a softness they didn't feel worthy of. The moments you forgave them when they barely forgave themselves. They remembered how your presence steadied them, how your trust sheltered them, how your heart became the only safe place they ever had. And that's when the truth cut them open. They hadn't betrayed another woman. They had betrayed the woman who believed in them more than they believed in themselves. And that betrayal didn't haunt them because of guilt. It haunted them because they realized that hurting you felt like hurting a part of their own soul. The witness described how your special person's hands were shaking, how their eyes were red, how every breath felt heavy, like they were trying to hold back a storm from escaping their chest. They cried not because they were caught, but because the moment they saw the truth through someone else's eyes, they finally understood the magnitude of what they risked. The night that started as a mistake became a mirror, forcing them to see the version of themselves they never wanted you to meet. And now comes the part that will set the stage for everything that follows. The witness leaned closer to you, choosing every word with precision, as if each one carried the power to shift fate. They're coming to you, not with excuses, not with half-truths, not with stories built to protect their image. They're coming with the truth that kept them awake, the truth that tore through their chest, the truth that made them realize that losing you would be the greatest tragedy of their life. They want to confess every detail, what happened, why it happened, what they felt before, during, and after. Not because they expect forgiveness, but because hiding anything now feels like losing you twice. And the witness told you something even more startling. Your special person believes that last night wasn't the end. It was the beginning of a truth they should have spoken long ago, the beginning of a change they're finally ready to make, the beginning of a moment where they stop running from their own emotions and start facing the person who became the anchor of their world, you. What happens next isn't just part of the story. It decides the entire direction of your destiny and theirs. The next revelation, the next meeting, the next confession, everything is building toward a moment you never saw coming. And the next part will uncover the truth they were most afraid to tell. This part does not begin with a whisper or a warning. This part begins with a sentence that felt like a door being kicked open in the middle of the night. The truth they're carrying isn't just a confession. It's a truth that will rewrite everything you thought you understood. Because while you spent the night trying to steady your breath, your special person spent theirs, unraveling every memory, every promise, every moment that led them to this breaking point. By dawn, they weren't the same person who stumbled into that mistake. Something inside them shifted. Their fear finally gave way to something quieter, but far more decisive, as if the pressure they had been carrying for too long had no space left to stay hidden. The walls they built around themselves didn't fall in a single dramatic moment, but rather softened, then fractured, until there was nothing left strong enough to hold back what they had been avoiding. In that shift, they were no longer trying to approach a version of you shaped by uncertainty or blind trust, but the version of you that had grown through experience, awareness, and emotional strength. That realization changed how they saw everything. What once felt like a need to justify events from the night before now revealed itself as something deeper, rooted in emotions they had never fully acknowledged out loud. It wasn't only about explaining actions or clarifying misunderstandings. It was about confronting the intensity of what had been unspoken for far longer than anyone realized. Beneath the surface of everything that unfolded, there was a truth they had kept buried, not out of malice, but out of fear. Fear of being seen too clearly, fear of losing control over feelings that refused to fade. The witness, now unintentionally placed at the center of this unfolding exchange, described how preparation for honesty had taken shape in silence, through repeated attempts to find the right words in empty spaces, where hesitation and courage kept trading places. What emerged wasn't a strategy to persuade or impress, but a struggle to finally speak without restraint, to step out from behind avoidance and face what had been avoided for too long. And in that struggle, something irreversible began forming, not a conclusion, but the beginning of truth, finally refusing to stay unspoken any longer. Something that explains why their emotions twisted into mistakes, why their love turned into fear, why their honesty turned into hesitation. And as the witness spoke, you felt something strange. Your pain was real, yes, but it was beginning to merge with curiosity, with anticipation, with the faint spark of something you didn't expect to feel so soon. Readiness. Readiness to hear. Readiness to confront. Readiness to finally understand. And now, here is the moment the story has been building toward. The witness said, "They left your special person standing alone, rehearsing the truth they never wanted to say, but can no longer keep locked inside. They're on their way to you, right now, in this very moment. Their steps may be slow, their chest may be tight, but their intention is clear. They aren't coming to justify. They aren't coming to negotiate. They aren't coming to pretend. They're coming because the truth they've been hiding goes deeper than any betrayal could reach. It's the truth about why they fear losing you more than losing themselves. It's about the real reason last night happened, the reason that doesn't excuse the pain, but reveals the hidden wound behind it. And in the next part, when their confession finally unfolds, you will hear the piece of the story that changes everything, the part even the witness didn't fully understand, the part your special person has never spoken out loud, the part that will make you see the entire night through a new lens. The final layer of the truth is coming, and it's unlike anything you imagined. The next chapter of this night doesn't begin with footsteps or apologies. It begins with a line that carried the force of a heartbeat, finally speaking after being silent for too long. "I never betrayed you. I betrayed the truth. I should have told you from the beginning." Those were the first words your special person rehearsed 100 times before gathering the strength to face you. And the moment they stood in front of you, eyes tired, breath shaky, hands trembling, they weren't the same person who made the mistake last night. Something in them looked wounded, raw, terrified, yet determined. They weren't scared of your anger. They weren't scared of your silence. They were scared of something much deeper, the possibility that you might listen to their truth and still walk away. Before they spoke another word, they took a breath so deep, it felt like the air around you froze. Because what they were about to reveal wasn't an excuse, wasn't a defense, wasn't a manipulation. It was the truth that explains everything. Why they hesitated, why they panicked, why they let fear twist them into someone they weren't proud of. And as they stood there, the weight of their next sentence hovered between you like the edge of a cliff. They told you that the betrayal didn't begin last night. It began long before that, on the day they realized how deeply they felt for you. They said they had never experienced a love that made them question their own worth. With you, every emotion intensified. Every moment mattered. Every silence became meaningful. And instead of embracing it, they became afraid of it. Afraid that they weren't enough. Afraid that one day you'd see their flaws and leave. Afraid that someone better would appear and take the place they didn't believe they deserved. That fear became something quieter over time, but far more persistent, like a shadow that never fully left their side. It shaped how they interpreted love, trust, and even silence, convincing them that what you gave so freely was something they might not deserve to receive in return. When the pressure of those thoughts finally reached its peak, the choice they made wasn't born from clarity or intention, but from a place tangled in self-doubt and emotional overwhelm, reflecting not their true character, but their deepest insecurity. In truth, they were never moving toward someone else with certainty. They were stepping away from the version of themselves that felt unworthy of the care and depth you offered. The person at the center of this confusion was never truly a stranger in the emotional sense. It was you, and the version of you that had placed faith in them when they struggled to place faith in themselves. Admitting this brought visible strain, because it turned something internal into something undeniable. What followed was an even deeper realization. Their fear was not rooted in losing you, but in the belief that they never truly measured up to the meaning you represented in their life. And then the perspective shifted again. They recalled how a witness, someone present through the aftermath, reflected back not just the events but the emotional truth underneath them. That witness didn't simply recount what happened, they exposed the deeper pattern, how silence and avoidance had carried more weight than any single action. The message was clear, almost unsettling in its simplicity. The outcome was never determined by a single moment, but by what remained unspoken for too long. And in that reflection, everything they thought they understood about regret, love, and consequence began to collapse into something far more honest and difficult to ignore. It was the realization that they loved you so deeply, it terrified them into breaking the very thing they wanted to protect. And now, standing in front of you, they weren't asking for forgiveness. They weren't asking for a second chance. They were asking for one thing only: the chance to show you the truth they buried for so long. The confession that was supposed to stay hidden. The feeling that changed their life the moment they met you. And in the next part, they will finally say the words they've been holding back since the very beginning. Words that will flip the entire story into a meaning far bigger than betrayal. This part opens with a sentence that didn't sound like a confession. It sounded like a truth breaking free after years of being buried alive. I didn't lose control last night. I lost the battle with a feeling I've been hiding from you since the first day. The moment those words left their mouth, the air shifted. Your special person's voice wasn't shaking anymore. It was steady, in a way that only comes when someone finally decides to stop running from themselves. Their eyes locked onto yours, not with desperation, but with a rawness you had never seen before. They said the woman who was betrayed wasn't a rival, wasn't someone else, wasn't a hidden chapter. The woman was the version of you who gave without asking, trusted without hesitation, and loved without conditions. They said they felt unworthy of that version of you, and instead of stepping up, they stepped back, straight into a moment that broke the foundation between you. And then came the truth they had never dared to admit. It wasn't another woman they escaped to last night. It was the Fae. Of the intensity of their own feelings for you. They said every time they felt you getting closer, every time you showed them more care, every time you trusted them a little deeper, their heart panicked. Not because something was wrong with you, but because everything was overwhelmingly right. That rightness terrified them more than loneliness ever did. And last night, when everything felt too real, too deep, too powerful, they made the worst decision of their life. Not because they wanted to hurt you, but because they didn't know how to handle loving someone who mattered more than anything else in their world. The witness, yes, the same person who told you the truth, had confronted your special person after everything collapsed. And what they said didn't just expose the mistake, it exposed the truth your special person had been avoiding. They told them that running away from love only breaks the person who loves genuinely. They told them that fear doesn't justify choices, but it explains the wounds hiding underneath them. They told them that the reason their actions felt so wrong is because they weren't built for betrayal. They were built for loyalty, for intensity, for connection. And hearing that forced your special person to break in a way they hadn't broken before. They admitted something that stunned even the witness. That the moment they realized what they had done last night, the pain they felt wasn't guilt alone. It was the fear that you would finally believe the lie they always told themselves, that they were not enough for you. They described how your special person sat in silence afterward, holding their head, trying to rewrite time, trying to take back the one moment that didn't reflect who they truly are. They didn't cry because they were exposed. They cried because the thought of losing you felt like losing the only place their heart had ever felt safe. And when they stood up and decided to come to you, they weren't coming as someone who made a mistake. They were coming as someone ready to face the truth of their own emotions for the first time. And this is where everything finally comes into focus. The moment they could no longer hold back what had been building inside them for so long. Standing before you, they no longer carried the same hesitation or defensive silence that once defined them. Instead, there was a calm honesty in their voice, unsteady only in its sincerity, as they admitted something they had avoided for far too long. What they came to understand, and finally expressed, was that nothing about their actions was driven by attraction elsewhere, distraction, or the presence of another person. It was something far more internal, far more complicated. They had been struggling with feelings for you that were deeper than anything they had ever experienced before. Feelings that didn't fit neatly into logic or control. Rather than accepting them, they let fear shape their response, and in doing so, created distance where there should have been openness. They recognized that the true misstep was never a single moment, but the absence of honesty when it mattered most. The silence that replaced truth when connection needed clarity. What they called betrayal was not rooted in lack of care, but in the inability to express how much they cared in a healthy, direct way. And now, with nothing left hidden between you, they acknowledge that what they feel is not something they can dismiss or escape, but something they must finally confront with full awareness. In that realization, the direction of everything between you shifts, opening a path defined not by confusion anymore, but by the weight of truth finally spoken aloud.